Why would she betray me like this? How could she destroy our family? These were my thoughts as I woke up, hungover and disoriented. My name is Theodore Hartwell, and until last night, I believed my wife Eleanora was my true love and devoted partner. Turns out she's only devoted to her lover, not me. She confessed to cheating for about a year and expected me to just accept it. Absolutely not. Anger boiled inside me as I replayed her words. She claimed to love both him and me, but wanted to spend more nights with him, leaving me powerless. She said he was a divorce lawyer she was helping, which was a lie. She admitted he was her divorce lawyer if I didn't go along with her plan. I knew enough from TV dramas that this was a major conflict of interest and could get him disbarred. I smirked for a moment but quickly lost my grin. I had no idea who this guy was, and getting Eleanora to reveal anything seemed impossible without drastic measures. I considered extreme action against her, but then I thought about my kids. She's their mother. I couldn't go that far. I thought through the situation again. If I didn't follow her rules, I'd be paying for her and her lover's lifestyle. A friend once told me his divorce strategy. He emptied his accounts, leaving his cheating wife with nothing to hire a lawyer. She found pro bono help but still lost. The difference was, he had no kids. I did, which meant I might have to pay child support. As far as I knew, she wasn't bringing him to our house. She must be going to his place. I called my in-laws, and my mother-in-law greeted me warmly, unaware of her daughter's infidelity. I asked about their babysitting routine, and she said they watched the kids 3 or 4 times a week, while Eleanora volunteered at the homeless shelter and food bank. It saddened me that Eleanora was even deceiving her parents. I thanked her and mentioned wanting to surprise Eleanora next week, asking her not to tell Eleanora. She bought my cheerful act and promised not to say a word. I thanked her and hung up. I looked at myself in the mirror. My hair wasn't thinning as much as I thought. I shaved and combed my hair, which looked better than Detective Thorne's on SVU. But my beer gut had to go. Despite Eleanora's hurtful comments, she was right about that. How did I let myself go like this? All those hours working overtime to provide for my kids and my cheating wife. I loved my kids, but my feelings for my wife were fading. First, I canceled our joint credit cards and got new ones in my name. Then I called my bank and moved all the money from our joint accounts to a new one in my name. I also stopped all automatic bill payments. This was self-defense. My wife's disrespect was clear, and she saw me as helpless in our divorce. She declared war, and she was wrong. Her lawyer gave her advice, but they underestimated me. Despite being a diesel mechanic, I'm not stupid. I spent 4 years in Army CID. I could have been a cop or a private investigator, but I loved working on engines. Now, as a certified diesel mechanic, I made good money with lots of overtime. I put on sweats and went for a jog to clear my head and lose some of the beer gut. After my run, I called my boss, explaining I needed a couple of weeks off for a family crisis. He understood and approved. Now it was time to plan. I knew there would be violence and bloodshed. I just hoped to avoid jail. With CID experience, I knew some tricks, but it would still be tough. I showered, changed, and went shopping. Preparing for winter, I bought soft gloves, a black turtleneck, and a ski mask without a mouth hole. I got Oakley shades with matte gray lenses and black frames. Walmart was my next stop. I was going to have some fun once I knew who he was. At the spy shop, I picked up voice-activated recorders and a GPS system with long-life batteries. Cameras could wait. I also got a gym bag for new clothes and matte black steel-toed work boots to replace my worn ones. At a sporting goods store, I bought an aluminum baseball bat and another gym bag. I got a sport girdle for my gut, not wanting to be identified by it. I paid cash for everything to avoid a paper trail. Then came the hard part, pretending to be the submissive husband when Eleanora got home, whenever that was. I wouldn't give in right away. Eleanora knows how stubborn I am. I stayed out all day until what would have been quitting time, not wanting her to suspect anything yet. Entering the house, I noticed Eleanora wasn't home. Well, screw it, I thought. I tried calling her cell phone, but it went straight to voicemail. Feeling urgent, I left her a message with the time and date, insisting she call me back immediately. Time to mess with her head a bit. 2 hours later, she finally called back. The kids were still at their grandparents' place, and she sounded out of breath, worried about the situation. I put on a broken tone, urging her to come home right away, emphasizing it was about the kids. I even sobbed for effect, and then hung up. Eleanora rushed home, arriving in less than 10 minutes. She entered the room from the garage, her face full of concern as she saw my pale appearance. Fearful for the children, she anxiously asked what was happening. In a harsh tone, I snapped at her, questioning her concern and accusing her of being too preoccupied with her lover to care about our children's well-being. My voice dripped with venom, and my eyes burned with intense hatred. I told her the marriage was over, but before ending it, I wanted to mess with her head. I pointed out the 2 hours her phone was off after I called her. Upon returning from work, I questioned her priorities, asking if her lover was more important than our kids. Overwhelmed with emotion, Eleanora collapsed on the living room couch, sobbing. In a lower tone, I pondered aloud if she would care as much if it were me instead of the kids. Would she just call her parents to extend the kids' stay so she could have more time with her boy toy? Despite her tear-streaked face, Eleanora looked up at me defiantly and insisted it wasn't like that, sobbing as she spoke. I accused her of using our children as weapons against me. Slowly shaking my head, I clarified that I wasn't trying to do that. I wanted her to realize the potential consequences of her actions. I asked how she would explain being 2 hours late for something important, and how we could keep such incidents a secret when her phone was off. I also highlighted the possibility of emergencies involving her parents and the kids trying to reach her. Unable to comprehend her actions, I maintained a low, even tone, stating she had brought this on herself by getting involved with her boyfriend. I expressed how much I missed my wife and emphasized that the kids missed their mommy, even though her parents loved them. This caused her to pale. Deep down, she knew I was right, but her stubborn pride prevented her from admitting it. In response to my observations, Eleanora shrieked, her face reddened with rage and a hint of guilt. Guilt seemed to fuel her fury. Calmly, I stated that if she attempted to divorce me, she would leave me ruined and broken. I acted swiftly, grabbing the GPS and a voice-activated recorder before heading to her car. I hid the recorder under her seat and the GPS under the passenger seat, keeping the receivers with me. This way, I could track her movements and hear her conversations. The signal range was 10 miles, ensuring I wouldn't lose it unless she went across town. The dipstick's reckoning was imminent. After planning the devices and testing the receivers, I pocketed the voice receiver and placed the GPS receiver in my Ford F-250 diesel. Seated inside the truck with my head in my hands, I observed Eleanora emerging, dressed to impress. Pleading with her, I expressed my desperation, asking her not to go through with it and not to damage our family. Her expression softened as she apologized, saying she truly loved me, but emphasizing that the other man needed her. I confronted her, pointing out that if she were genuinely sorry, she wouldn't proceed with the affair. I made it clear that she was betraying her role as a faithful wife by being involved with another man. Despite my straightforward approach, she insisted she had to do it because he needed her. Stressing the importance of family, I reminded Eleanora that our family needed her presence. I questioned her commitment to me and our children, emphasizing that our 3 kids were the product of our love for each other. I pleaded with her to remember our shared history and the family we had built together. However, she reiterated her commitment to the other man, assuring me she would be fully present for me and the kids tomorrow. Despite my reservations, I reluctantly agreed, expressing my disapproval with a shake of my head and a sigh of defeat. Her face initially displayed triumph, but quickly transformed into a condescending smile. She assured me not to worry, expressing her love and stating that she would always be mine. I acknowledged her words, mentioning it would take a long time for me to be okay with her decision. Shaking my head once again, I watched as she walked towards the garage. She was correct. This was just a temporary situation. Temporary until lover boy was dealt with. Then, let her see how much she liked him when I was done. As soon as she left, I grabbed the aluminum baseball bat, my old Bowie knife, and my blowtorch. I grinned evilly as I climbed into the cab of my Ford and turned on the GPS and voice receivers. She had the radio on, and I could hear her humming a happy tune along with it. I slipped the torch, knife, and bat into the gym bag, giving her a 5-minute head start. I saw on the GPS that she was only a few miles away, so I gunned my truck to life and headed over. I pulled up to the house where she had just parked her car in his garage. Crap, she even had a garage door opener for his place. Jesus, she might as well be married to him instead of me. My rage rose again, but I took deep breaths to keep it in check. I wanted nothing more than to bust in there and smack the crap out of him. And her too if she got in the way. At least I got his license plate number and jotted it down quickly. I always carry a pen and a small notebook, an old habit from my Army CID days. I also noted his address. No, this would take some proper planning. I made sure my gear was ready and slipped into the back of the cab to change into what I called my redneck ninja gear. I put on the girdle to hide my gut, pulled on gloves to avoid leaving fingerprints, and wore a sweater over it. I pulled on black jeans and then the ski mask over my face. Tonight would just be reconnaissance. Tomorrow would be different. I drove to the mouth of the alleyway behind the houses and stopped a few houses down from Loverboys. Quietly, I slipped out of the truck, leaving the bat behind, and crept through his alley gate. No alarms so far. I moved low and fast to the nearest window. The light from inside contrasted with the pitch-black night, giving me an advantage. I crouched below the window and peeked over the sill. What I saw made my blood boil. The guy was sitting there, stroking himself while my wife gave him a striptease. Taking deep breaths to calm myself, I listened intently, trying to catch any clues about this guy's identity. His voice was lewd and appreciative, using suggestive language as Eleanora danced. Despite my urge to storm in and confront them, I maintained self-control. I was tempted to get my bag from the truck, but decided against it. The man kept praising Eleanora and talking without any guilt. Eleanora giggled and mentioned someone named Nate. The guy warned Nate that he would regret knowing Eleanora Fremont. That was enough for me. I decided to leave before acting impulsively. I didn't want Eleanora present when I confronted this man. I had no intention of hurting Eleanora, but her lover was fair game. He had knowingly seduced my wife, knowing she was married. He was dangerous, and I would make sure he never did this to anyone else's wife. Back in the cab, I changed out of my ninja gear, feeling the surprising comfort of the sports girdle hiding my beer gut. I put on my regular clothes, blue jeans, a t-shirt, and boots, started my truck, and drove away. I now had a name, Nate, and could look up his last name in the morning. When I got home, I retrieved my lockpicks from my nightstand, an old habit from my Army CID days. I called my mom and asked if the kids could stay overnight. She happily agreed, missing her grandkids. I promised to bring them by in the morning. Next, I called Eleanora's folks, letting them know I'd pick up the kids later and take them to my mom's. They were relieved. I packed a suitcase with clothes and shoved it in my closet. The endgame was near. Eleanora would realize how much she had lost within the next 72 hours. I got to bed early and woke up at dawn. After a morning jog and a healthy breakfast, I looked up Nate's address and license plate number on my old laptop. Mr. Nathaniel Grantson, a divorce attorney who lost his wife in an accident years back. So they weren't lying about that, but he used his tragedy to seduce my wife. Typical asshole. The news of her loss made me feel even better about my plans for him. He would know true pain, not just the pain of loss, but the consequences of stealing another man's wife. I went to the bank and picked up my new ATM card and credit cards. I withdrew $300 from the ATM and rented a nondescript sedan from Hertz. With my gym bag transferred from the truck to the car, I parked down the street from Loverboy's house. I called Eleanora, and surprisingly, she picked up on the first ring. I mentioned being on a short break at work and asked how long she planned to keep the kids at her parents' house. She said until Monday. I suggested that my mom could watch them for a while since she missed them. Eleanora agreed nonchalantly. I asked if I could expect some affection at home when I finished work. After a long silence, she muted her microphone and reluctantly agreed, saying it was only fair since she had promised to be all mine that night. Her quick compliance surprised and worried me. I pretended to be leaning toward her perspective, but emphasized wanting equal time with her. Eleanora was happy, thinking I was coming around. I played along, saying we needed to talk when she got home and proposing a special weekend plan. She agreed, unaware of my true intentions. As the conversation lightened, I instructed her to be showered and ready for my arrival, mentioning my early departure from work. Despite my convincing tone, I felt disgusted at my own performance. However, recent days of jogging, healthy eating, and abstaining from drinks had improved my stamina, making me more confident about the evening. She promised to be showered and ready for me, expressing her eagerness to see me tonight. After ending the call, I slipped my cell phone back into my pocket and swiftly changed into my redneck ninja gear in the back seat of the sedan. This time, I skipped the ski mask and shades. I slumped down in the car, parked opposite Nate's place, and waited for Eleanora to leave. Despite her lack of awareness, I couldn't afford to be careless. Starting the car, I pulled into the driveway of an abandoned house a few doors down and across the street from Nate's place. Adjusting the mirror to keep an eye on his driveway and garage, I settled back into the seat, ready to wait for hours if necessary. Eleanora surprised me by leaving after only a few hours. She texted me, saying she was heading home, clean and fresh, waiting for me. I smiled grimly, backed out of the driveway, and followed her at a safe distance, ensuring she wasn't lying. She pulled into our driveway 10 minutes later, and I drove past, heading back to Nate's place. I parked in the alley behind the houses again and slipped in through his back gate, this time with the bat in hand. I made sure my ski mask and shades were on, deciding it was time. I looked in his bedroom window. Loverboy was asleep. I smiled grimly and tried the back door. It was unlocked. What an arrogant asshole. Fine by me. I always enjoyed how Christian Bale altered his voice as Batman in the Dark Knight trilogy. Adopting my full redneck ninja persona, I entered the bedroom where he lay fast asleep. Dropping the gym bag, I retrieved the bat, cleared my throat loudly, and watched as he groggily opened his eyes. Panic set in when he saw the bat. I aimed for his knee, shattering his kneecap and severely limiting his mobility. He screamed and I struck again, breaking his other kneecap. Smirking beneath my mask, I lowered my voice to a growl. I confronted him, taunting him about his involvement with Eleanora and revealing that Theodore, a friend, had warned me not to damage him. Expressing my own sense of justice, I swung at his groin, hearing bones crack as his pelvis broke. He pleaded for his life, offering money and crying in pain. Dismissing his pleas, I growled that I didn't want his money, but demanded he never think about Eleanora Fremont again. I warned of dire consequences if he failed to comply, emphasizing that this encounter was merely a warning. I punctuated this with another swift swing to his groin. From what I observed the night before, he wasn't as well endowed as I was. He was in shape, but he wouldn't be able to compete once I was through with him. I swung the bat again, breaking his left arm just below the shoulder. I found his cell phone and smashed it along with both of his landline phones. I didn't want him calling Eleanora or anyone else. Exiting through the back, I slipped out the gate and into the sedan. After changing again, I drove to a convenience store across town, where I disposed of the bat and filled the gas tank. I drove out of town, set the remaining gym bag on fire, and tossed the torch into the flames after wiping it down. Burning the Oakley shades was regrettable, but it was a necessary sacrifice. Next, I consulted a divorce attorney and had papers drawn up against Eleanora. I sought full custody of the kids and 75% of our assets. I wouldn't pay alimony or request child support if she cooperated. I decided not to disclose the real reason for our divorce to her family. I informed my attorney that evidence of her affair would be recorded soon. Returning the rental car, I thanked the provider and jogged back to the diesel shop. I informed my boss that I could finish the remaining shift but needed to leave early for a meeting with Eleanora. A few days off were still required, and he approved. After completing my work in the shop, I bought a prepaid cell phone and, using an altered voice, reported the incident involving Mr. Nathaniel Grantson to the police, providing his address. I discarded the phone into a nearby canal. My intent wasn't to kill him, but to make him feel the pain I endured. Every time he thought about making love to my wife, he'd remember the misery he caused, and that to me was a fair trade. I extracted the voice recorder from my pocket and activated it, recording a note about my wife's affair for evidence. Pulling into the garage, I retrieved the GPS and voice-activated recorders from Eleanora's car and tossed them into my truck. Re-entering the house, I approached Eleanora from behind, encircling her waist with my arms. I commented on the enticing aroma of the food she was cooking, planting a kiss on her neck. She was preparing steaks on the stove and had already made mashed potatoes and green beans. Eleanora expressed relief that I seemed more understanding, cooing as she turned for a kiss. Shifting the conversation, I casually inquired if she would have genuinely divorced me if I hadn't complied with her demands. I kept my tone light, as though her threats didn't bother me. She admitted she would have divorced me without hesitation if I had denied her the relationship with her lover. Expressing regret, She insisted that she loved me. I asked her point blank if she would have taken our kids and kept me from seeing them, noting how harsh that sounded. I kept my tone light, pretending to go along with her demands. Eleanora admitted she would have done just that, revealing her lover had advised her to make the divorce as painful as possible. She showed a hint of remorse and mentioned that we had the weekend together, with her mother taking care of the kids until Monday. She suggested taking Monday off for us to spend time together, but confessed she planned to meet her lover again on Tuesday night until Wednesday morning, promising to be back to take care of the kids. I sarcastically complimented her on being a wonderful mother. In a resigned tone, I asked if there was anything I could do to make her stop seeing him. She sighed, sounding almost condescending, and apologized, saying she had to see this through despite what it meant for her role as a mother. I agreed to tonight being ours, but I planned to serve her with divorce papers on Monday. My lawyer assured me they would be ready, and I intended to call first thing Monday morning. Dinner was amazing, and I knew I'd miss her cooking. Afterward, I showered and took her in my arms. We made love passionately and intensely, something we hadn't done in a long time. She climaxed multiple times thanks to my improved stamina and sobriety. I satisfied her completely, but it didn't end there. I marked her body with hickeys on her chest, neck, stomach, and inner thighs. I was reclaiming her, and she seemed to enjoy every moment of it. After we finished, Eleanora went to the bathroom and found the marks. Shocked and screaming, she came back to the bedroom, worried about how she could face her lover now. I shrugged off her concern, telling her that as my wife, I wanted her marked as mine, regardless of what he thought. I reminded her that she never told me not to mark her and pointed out that she seemed to enjoy it during the act. My response left her silent, and she softened, sitting on the bed and holding my hand. She admitted it was the best sex she'd ever had, even better than with her lover. I could tell she meant it, and I realized my efforts had paid off. I pleaded with her to stop seeing her lover, expressing my love and desire to spend the rest of my life with her. Despite hiding my true emotions, the encounter had been driven by anger and hatred instead of tenderness and love. Regardless, I played my part well. Eleanora assured me she was still my wife, saying she loved me and claiming the affair would end in a few months. She seemed genuinely happy and ready for the possibility of divorce, but I had other plans. The next day, she returned to her usual self, cooking, cleaning, and initiating lovemaking that night. I told her I had taken Saturday and Monday off to spend more time together. We enjoyed our time, though I remained cautious of her facade. I renewed the marks I made on her Friday night, and she didn't protest. Monday arrived, and everything started to fall apart. I pleaded with her one last time not to go back to him. Instead, she grabbed her cell phone and headed to the living room. I told her I was picking up the kids, and she agreed. I collected our son and 2 daughters from Mom's house, and she thanked me for letting them stay with her. On the way home, we stopped at Burger King for lunch. They loved it. Sure, it's not McDonald's, but it's better. As we were leaving, Eleanora's ringtone echoed from my cell phone. I playfully chuckled, asking if she missed me already. I explained I had taken the kids to Burger King for lunch, and we were on our way home. Eleanora screamed, demanding an explanation. I casually mentioned she had been served with divorce papers while I was picking up the kids, adding that she must have received the papers by now. Apologizing, I suggested we discuss it at home. I ended the call before she could respond and turned off my phone. Pulling into the garage, I took the kids inside. Despite the divorce papers, Eleanora was genuinely happy to see them, and they eagerly ran to her, asking where she had been. She lied, saying she had been volunteering, and then truthfully told them we had a special weekend planned just for us. She sent the kids to play in their rooms. I told Eleanora we needed to talk and took her into the basement, ensuring the kids wouldn't hear us. I told her I had decided to divorce her, expressing that I couldn't endure the situation any longer. I reminded her of my repeated requests for her to end the affair and revealed I had a recording of her admitting to the affair. I declared my intention to send the tape to my attorney, who would use it as evidence in the divorce proceedings. The papers indicated I was seeking full custody, highlighting her neglect of the family and her admission that her lover was more important than the children, which would be presented at trial. I hinted that her lover acting as her attorney could lead to his disbarment, as it was unethical for a lawyer to be romantically involved with their clients, especially in divorce cases. Following my attorney's advice, I watched her stand there in shock, her mouth hanging open, struggling to find words. I explained that I realized I never truly knew her, just as she never truly knew me. Over the years, I had done everything to make her happy, buying the house, her car, and much of her jewelry. Despite spending more than we could afford, I worked overtime to provide for her and the kids. I expressed regret for not balancing that with affection and love. I admitted I had genuinely loved her, but her affair had killed that love. Contrary to her belief, I never said I was okay with it. I revealed I had given her one final chance that morning to end the affair, begging her to do so. If she had complied, I wouldn't have served her with divorce papers. Instead, she called her lover before I picked up the kids, apologizing for the situation. I shook my head ruefully, though I was lying through my teeth. I didn't want her to know I'd been orchestrating this all along. In the divorce decree, I proposed generous visitation rights for her with the kids, but only under my supervision, my mom's or grandpa's. The next step was tough. I had to inform Mom about the impending divorce. I called Mom first, explaining everything, including the recording of Eleanora's affair confession. Mom agreed to babysit while I worked. I gathered the kids and gently explained that Mommy and I wouldn't be living together anymore, but assured them we would always be there for them. They seemed excited about moving in with Grandma. Mom had plenty of room since Dad passed away, so it was a good fit. We packed up quickly and I informed Eleanora she could visit at my mom's house, provided she didn't bring her boyfriend. She looked utterly defeated. 2 days later, Eleanora found out that Nate was in the hospital. When she called, I was back at work. Eleanora, furious, accused me of nearly killing him. I feigned confusion and denial, playing my part convincingly. She insisted I knew who she was talking about and claimed Nate would never be the same again. Crying, she accused me of trying to kill him. I kept up the act, asking who Nate was and expressing disbelief. I mentioned a colleague and drinking buddy named Nate Barrett, who was present and overheard my side of the conversation. Nate Barrett knew the situation and struggled not to laugh. Realizing she couldn't prove my involvement, Eleanora backed down. I calmly asked if this Nate was her boyfriend, adding that if he was almost dead, it couldn't be Nate Barrett, who was likely to die of a heart attack. Nate Barrett burst into laughter and ran into the office. Eleanora admitted that Nate claimed he was attacked but didn't know who did it. She mentioned his crushed balls. I expressed my lack of sympathy if he was the man who stole her from me, joking that I'd buy a beer for whoever did it. I planted seeds of doubt, suggesting he might seduce someone else's wife. I reminded her she couldn't be with him all the time. Eleanora began to doubt his intentions, and I smiled, asking why she thought he wouldn't do such a thing. I pointed out that he had used his wife's death to seduce her. Eleanora stopped and thought, eventually realizing I was right. In a rare moment, she admitted I was right. Mark the day on the calendar, the day she actually acknowledged I was right about something. I laughed. She didn't like that but didn't fight the divorce. Mom testified about babysitting for my children while I worked, and the judge took everything into account, including Eleanora's behavior over the past year. She had been having an affair with Nate Grantson while leaving the kids with responsible adults to carry on her affair in secret. The judge didn't declare her unfit, but made me the primary custodian, with Eleanora as secondary, on the condition she not bring her lovers around the children. I wasn't thrilled with that, but I was satisfied. Before Nate, Eleanora had been a great mother. Now she would have the chance to be a great mother again. The judge ruled I would only pay child support for the time the kids spent with Eleanora. She was ordered to get a job. With her accounting degree, she could find work easily. The house was sold, and we split the proceeds 50-50ths. Our joint accounts, which I had emptied at the beginning, were split 75-25ths in my favor. Eleanora tried to complain, but the judge sternly reminded her she had nearly lost all custody due to her own selfishness. Interestingly, the same judge presided over my alienation of affection lawsuit against Nathaniel Grantson. He took it seriously, and based on Eleanora's confession and testimony on my behalf, awarded me $500,000. I liked that judge. When the final gavel fell, marking our official divorce and me $500,000 richer, I took Cassie, my attorney, out for drinks at the Silver Spa. I had been exercising, eating right, and cutting out almost all drinks, but that night I allowed myself a beer or two. My beer gut was gone, replaced by six-pack abs. I'd gotten back in shape during this whole mess. I knew I had to be there for my kids and be ready to get back on the market. I hope to find someone who wasn't as shallow and selfish as Eleanora. Cassandra Langley is a gorgeous woman with dark chocolate skin that looked delectable. It had been almost 7 months since I last made love to Eleanora, just before I blindsided her with the divorce papers. During that time, Cassie and I had grown close. We were more than just attorney and client. We had become friends. As friends, we went to the bar for a couple of beers. Cassie asked about my plans, and I told her I intended to return to work and focus on raising my kids. I mentioned finding a smaller, one-story house with 4 bedrooms, which was more affordable than the large one Eleanora had made me buy 3 years ago. We clinked bottles as I explained that I had moved in a couple of weeks ago and closed on the house. The new location was closer to work, which the kids loved. Cassie then shared her situation, acknowledging she took on my case despite the potential risks. I thanked her, and she revealed she had been divorced for about 4 years since her ex was caught cheating. I expressed surprise, and she explained she doesn't like cheaters, which resonated with me. We shared a laugh and clinked bottles again. As our professional relationship concluded, Cassie surprised me by asking if she could fire me as a client. Puzzled, I asked why, and she humorously mentioned she doesn't date clients. I agreed, and she fired me with a smile, suggesting we go to her place so she could cook for me. Fast forward 6 months, and Cassie and I have been dating. It has been a joyful period. As a high-powered divorce attorney, Cassie is not high maintenance, especially compared to Eleanora. She loves me and my kids, and we find it adorable that the children call her Mommy. Cassie has moved in with us, and Eleanora joins us for dinner some nights when she takes the kids for the weekend. Cassie and I share a fulfilling life together, enjoying each other's company and the pleasures of a great relationship. As for Nate, he never recovered from what I did to him. Left penniless and alone, all his wife's insurance money went to paying his medical bills, court fees, and my alienation of affection lawsuit. Good riddance. Eleanora seems to be doing better now. According to her doctor, her hormones were really out of whack, but she's been taking supplements and seems to be on a more even keel. She has a steady job at an accounting firm in our town and is making decent money. I've been promoted to supervisor at the diesel shop and now make as much in 40 hours as I used to in 60. I have plenty of time to spend with my kids and my new partner. Eleanora will have to live with the consequences of her actions, and that's good enough for me. She blames herself for everything now, and I'm not going to console her. She doesn't even date anymore, claiming she's still in love with me. Bullcrap, but whatever. She'll live with those regrets for the rest of her life, and part of me hopes she chokes on them. Am I still a little bitter? Yeah, I have to admit that I am. Luckily, Cassie is here to help take my mind off the crap my ex put me through. Life is pretty damn good now.